January 1956. Studio City, California, on Radford Avenue at the north end of the San Fernando Valley, where the Republic Pictures lot runs behind a chain-link fence and the sound stages stand dark and cold before the production crews arrive. A woman is on her hands and knees in the corridor behind Stage 7, scrubbing a floor that 40 people will walk across this morning without looking down. Here is the story. Dorothy Holt was 37 years old, and she had been cleaning floors at Republic Pictures since the spring of 1954, 6 months after her husband Pete died in a hospital in El Paso, Texas, 300 miles from the canyon in Chihuahua, where the fall went wrong. She had gotten the job through a property man named Vic Garza, who had worked with Pete for 12 years, and who felt, though he did not say it plainly, that the industry owed Dorothy Holt something more than it was going to provide on its own. He told the facilities manager she was reliable and that she needed the work, and the facilities manager had hired her without asking further questions, which was the only way that kind of thing got done. The corridor behind Stage 7 was 40 feet long and smelled of sawdust and floor wax, and the coffee Dorothy kept in a thermos on the equipment cart, because the work started before the commissary opened. The linoleum was industrial green, worn pale along the center where the traffic ran heaviest. Overhead, the fluorescent tubes hummed at a frequency nobody noticed consciously, but that was always there. Through the wall of the stage she could sometimes hear the early riggers moving pipe and cable in the pre-dawn dark, a hollow metallic sound like something being prepared for a purpose she had no part in. Dorothy worked from the far end toward the door with a scrub brush and a pail, on her hands and knees because the mop did not reach the baseboards, and the baseboards had to be done right, or the facilities manager would note it on his clipboard. She had done this 5 days a week for 22 months. Pete Holt had been doing stunt work in Hollywood since 1937, when he drove a buckboard off a cliff for a Buck Jones picture, and decided this was better than anything else he was qualified to do. He worked Republic Westerns through the late 30s and into the 40s, and first worked alongside John Wayne in 1939 during reshoots for a cavalry picture on the backlot. After that, he worked a number of Wayne productions, not always doubling for Wayne directly, but running the same company, falling off the same horses, rolling the same wagons in the same dust. He was known in the stunt community as the man who could take a horse fall cleaner than anyone working, which meant studios called him when a shot required someone to go down fast and get up and do it again. He was careful, reliable, and good at the work in the specific way that people are good at dangerous things, not reckless, but precise, because precision was the only available substitute for safety. He did not complain about the rates, and he did not refuse a gag he thought he could make work, and he made most of them work for 19 years without a serious injury, which in his profession was not luck so much as the accumulated discipline of a man who treated dangerous work the way a surgeon treats an incision, with full attention, every time, no exceptions. He was 38 years old and had been working steadily for 19 years when a chase sequence near Camargo, Chihuahua, in October of 1953 ended with a horse coming down on an unexpected slope, rolling, and Pete's head catching the edge of a granite outcropping on the way over. He was flown to El Paso. He lived 11 days. His daughter Karen was 6. His son Tommy was 9. The studio, Wayne Fellows Productions, in association with Warner Bros., settled for $2,400 and a letter of condolence signed by the production lawyer. Pete had not been a full SAG member for the required 5 years to receive the Guild's death benefit. There was no pension. There was no further obligation. The letter said they were deeply sorry for the loss of a valued colleague. Dorothy read the letter once and put it in a kitchen drawer, and did not look at it again. Have you ever known someone who absorbed everything the world threw at them and kept getting up and doing what needed to be done, not because they were fine, but because fine was not one of the available options? Someone who did not ask anyone for help because asking had stopped producing results, and the work still needed doing, and the children still needed to be fed. Some of you know what that costs. Some of you have been that person, in that kitchen, reading that letter. This is for every one of them. There were men in the industry who had worked with Pete for years, men who had borrowed his rigging equipment and called him when they needed someone reliable on a difficult gag. Men who had drunk whiskey with him at rap parties and known his children's names. They sent cards in November of 1953. They went back to work in December. They did not call Dorothy in 1954 or in 1955. Hollywood knew what had happened to Pete Holt's family. Hollywood decided this was unfortunate but not actionable. The corridor behind Stage 7 needed to be cleaned by 7 in the morning. And there was apparently a woman who could do that. You know that town. You know the version of it that exists everywhere. The place that understands exactly what is right and decides, collectively, that someone else will handle it. The room that checks its watch and remembers it has somewhere to be. Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. I want to know how far this one reaches. John Wayne had a production meeting on the Republic lot that January morning. He was in conversation with Herbert Yates about 3 scripts that Republic had in development and that Batjack, Wayne's production company, was considering acquiring. He had parked at the main gate on Radford at 6:45 and walked toward the administration building the way he walked every unfamiliar lot, along the edges, through the back corridors, reading the buildings. He came into the corridor behind Stage 7 at 6:52. Dorothy was at the far end with her back to the door. He stopped. He had met Dorothy Holt twice. Once at a company party on the Republic lot in 1949 when Pete had brought her out, and once on the Hondo location in Arizona in the summer of 1952 when she had driven out with the kids for a week. He had talked to her for maybe 20 minutes across both occasions. He knew her name. He knew Pete's face. He knew what had happened in Chihuahua in October of 1953, and he knew that he had not done anything about it. And he had known both of those things for 26 months. He walked down the corridor. Dorothy heard the footsteps, heavier than the cleaning crew, moving at a different pace, and turned around. He said, "Mrs. Holt." She sat back on her heels. She was 37 years old, with her hair pinned back and a work apron over her clothes, and the scrub brush still in her right hand. She did not look away from him. She said, "Mr. Wayne." He crouched down so he was not standing over her. He asked how long she had been there. She told him. 22 months. He asked about the children. She told him. Tommy was 12 and Karen was 9, and both were in school, and both were fine. She said fine the way a woman says it, when fine is the accurate word and not the honest one. He looked at the scrub brush and the pail and the 40 feet of corridor still ahead of her. He said, "I'm going to my car and coming back. Don't go anywhere." She said, "I have to finish by 7. He said, "I know. I'll be quick." He walked out to the main gate. He was gone 8 minutes. He came back with an envelope, and he walked down the full length of the corridor to where she was working. And he crouched beside her, and he held the envelope toward her. And when she reached for it, he did not give her the envelope. He took both her hands in his, and opened her palms, and placed the cash into them directly, counted and loose. The way you put something into a person's hands when you need them to understand it is theirs now, and there is no mechanism for its return. He said, "The studio settled Pete's life for $2,400. I want you to know what I thought about that number." The envelope had held $10,000. Dorothy looked at the money in her open hands. She looked at him. He said, "Pete died on my picture, not the studio's. Mine. Pete fell off horses for 19 years, so the man standing next to him didn't have to. And the man standing next to him was usually me. I understood what Pete was doing. I should have found you in 53. I'm sorry it took until now. He stood. He looked at the remaining corridor. He said, "Finish your floor." He walked out to his production meeting with Herbert Yates, arrived 9 minutes early, and did not mention what had happened in the corridor. Dorothy finished her shift. She rode the bus home to Van Nuys and sat at the kitchen table and counted the money twice. $10,000 in 50s and 20s. Correct both times, and she sat with it in her hands for a while before she put it in the kitchen drawer where the studio's letter had been. She was not cleaning floors at Republic Pictures in February. A woman at her church referred her to a small accounting firm on Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks that needed a bookkeeper and was willing to train someone who had the right head for numbers. Dorothy had the right head for numbers, the particular precision that develops in a person who has managed a household on inadequate money for years and has therefore built a very exact relationship with figures. She was hired at the firm in February of 1956, and she worked there for 21 years. She became a senior bookkeeper. She bought the house in Van Nuys in 1962. She put Tommy and Karen through school. Here is the arithmetic of one morning in a studio corridor. Pete Holt worked stunts for 19 years, from 1937 until October of 1953. He averaged approximately 140 stunt days per year at rates between $90 and $200 a day, depending on the picture and the gag. A working life that generated roughly $320,000 in gross earnings over 19 years before the costs Pete absorbed himself: rigging equipment, travel, the medical expenses that came out of his own pocket because day player stuntmen in the 40s and early 50s had no employer coverage. When he died, his estate had no pension, no sustained death benefit, and a settlement of $2,400. The studio had valued 19 years of the most physically dangerous skilled labor in the picture business. At $2,400, $10,000 did not correct that arithmetic. What it did was interrupt Dorothy's trajectory, the one that ran from scrub brush to 20 more years of a body wearing itself out in a building where nobody looked at the floor. Instead of that, 21 years of bookkeeping on Ventura Boulevard. A house purchased in 1962 for $14,000, paid off in full by 1974. 2 children through school, the specific weight of a family that owned something and understood how it had gotten to a place where owning was possible. Tommy Holt became a stuntman. He started in 1965, at 19, the same age Pete had been when he first drove a buckboard off a cliff in a Buck Jones picture. He joined SAG on his first day because his mother had sat him down at the kitchen table and explained precisely what the absence of that membership had cost the family, and Tommy was not the kind of young man who needed to be told a thing twice. He worked for 31 years, westerns in the late 60s, action pictures in the 70s and 80s, the first generation of large-budget action films in the early 90s. He kept a photograph of Pete on the door of his trailer on every picture he ever worked. Pete at 25, on the Republic lot, rigging harness over one shoulder, hat pushed back, squinting into the San Fernando Valley sun. Every morning on every set, Tommy Holt opened his trailer door and saw his father's face. The photograph is on the desk in Tommy's house in Chatsworth. Beside it is a copy of the accident report from October 1953, requested from the Warner Bros. Archives in 1978. Kept because Tommy believes a man should know the precise facts of how his father died. Beside the accident report is a photograph of Tommy with his own son Matthew, taken on a picture in 1989. Matthew is in a stunt rigging harness and he is grinning. Matthew Holt has been working stunts since 2001. He is a SAG member. He carries proper insurance. When the picture he is working wraps, he goes home to a house in Simi Valley, and his children know their grandfather Tommy and their great-grandfather Pete, and the specific reason those things matter in the way that they do. 3 generations of Holt men have done the most dangerous work in the picture business. The first one died with nothing to show for it. The second and the third came home. If you find yourself on Radford Avenue in Studio City, the Republic Pictures lot is now CBS Studio Center. The sound stages are still there. Stage 7 is still there. The corridor behind it still runs 40 feet from door to door. The linoleum has been replaced several times. The fluorescent tubes have been replaced. The baseboards still have to be done right, or someone will note it on a clipboard. Some of you know what it is to be invisible in a building you make ready for people who will not see you doing it. If you know that work, or if you loved someone who did it, this story is theirs. John Wayne never mentioned Dorothy Holt publicly. Not in any interview from 1956 or after. Not in any studio press release or profile. Vic Garza heard about what happened in the corridor behind Stage 7 and told 2 people. And those 2 people told it differently enough that the story spread without its specific facts. And a story without its specific facts dissolves into Hollywood mythology and stops being true. The one person who kept the precise facts was Dorothy. She told Tommy when he was 18 and had just told her he intended to follow Pete into stunt work. She sat him at the kitchen table in Van Nuys and told him the entire thing, the settlement letter, the 22 months, the corridor, the man who crouched down so he was not standing over her, the cash placed directly into her open hands, the exact words. Because she needed him to understand, before he stepped onto his first set, what the industry could take and what a man who understood the debt could give back. Tommy asked her what she had said when Wayne stood up and told her to finish her floor. Dorothy said she hadn't said anything at first. She said she had looked at the money in her hands, and then at the corridor, and then back at him. She said, "I said thank you." He said, "Don't thank me. Pete earned this. I'm 26 months late with it." Then he walked out of the corridor, and she went back to the baseboards. Dorothy told Tommy he needed to remember both things, what Pete had earned, and the 26 months. She said the industry would always know what it owed, and would always have a reason why this was not quite the moment to pay it. She said the 26 months was the part that was on Wayne, and that he had said so himself, and that this was the most important part of the story. If this story is worth keeping, pass it on to someone who would understand what it means. Subscribe so you don't miss the ones still coming. There are more of them, and they all deserve to be heard. And unfortunately, they don't make men like John Wayne anymore.